twice this week, the U.S. ambassador to Canada has been telling Canadians about his great disappointment. He has said, Pete Hoekstra has said twice that the United States had hoped for a bigger deal with Canada than just the CUSMA, than just the USMCA. He said they had hoped for a deal that encompassed critical minerals, steel, energy, nuclear, but it wasn't possible. So he said this to two audiences this week. What's your side of the story?
That bigger deal that's in the interest not just of the United States, but in the interest of the Canadian people is not on the table, but it's still possible. What is the fact is that Canada and Mexico have the best actual trading relationship, trading agreements with the United States. First point. Second point is that a process is just beginning with reviews in each of our country, consultations in each of our country, of how that relationship can be improved. And while those consultations are going on, of course, we're having bilateral discussions with the United States, so you may see improvements along the way. We have the ambition, but a deal is a deal, and a deal has to go for both sides, and Canada will agree a deal that's in the best interest of Canadians. It should not surprise anyone, including the U.S. ambassador.
The U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, sparked outrage when he suggested that Canadians lacked passion for America. His comments came across as condescending, almost as if Canada owed enthusiasm to Washington. But when Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked about it, his response dismantled that insult completely. Calmly and firmly, he made it clear that Canada will not be lectured, shamed, or bullied by anyone, especially not by American officials trying to score political points. Now let's see what the U.S. ambassador has to say about Canadians.
I'm disappointed that I came to Canada, a Canada that it is very, very difficult to find Canadians who are passionate about the American-Canadian relationship. Okay? You ran a campaign where it was anti-American, elbows up, me too. It was an anti-American campaign. That has continued. That's disappointing. I talked to a lot of business people. They are passionate about the relationship because they recognize rebuilding ecosystems and rebuilding the kind of economic relationships that we have. As some people talk about, we'll go other places. It's kind of like, that's hard. Plus, this one works pretty well. We've created a lot of prosperity and wealth, high quality, high paying jobs by working together on both sides of the border. Like I said, I'm passionate for it. The business community is passionate for it, but they're not very public about it.
Carney's reply wasn't emotional, it was precise. He reminded everyone that Canada already has one of the strongest, most balanced trade relationships with the United States. Any so-called bigger deal would only happen if it benefits Canadians. That was the line. A deal for both sides, not one dictated by Washington. And with that, he exposed the reality behind Hoekstra's frustration. America's disappointment is not about Canada's coldness, but its independence.
Some Canadians are choosing to boycott American products. Some Canadians are choosing to change their vacation plans. Some are even going so far as to selling their vacation properties because they're frustrated in this moment. Do you think that's sustainable?
That is for the Canadians to decide. What I will point out is that Americans are continuing to move forward. We still consider Canadians and Canada a strong friend. Americans are still vacationing here. We have not banned American products. We don't have, consumer-driven, buy American and stop buying Canadian. Those are things that Americans have not done. We get along, we believe we get along great with Canada. If the Canadians want to make this more of a personal anti-American perspective, that is their business, okay? But I was just out in Vancouver and went to one of the tourist areas, and I said, hey, what's happening with American tourism? They said, we're seeing as many Americans, if not more, than what we did last year. And it's kind of like, great. That, to me, it's a symbol of the strength of the American-Canadian relationship. if Canadians want to take that relationship in a different way, as some of your Canadian officials are saying, don't travel, don't visit America. Okay, that's the decision that you make.
Hoekstra's complaints revealed something deeper. He admitted that ordinary Canadians don't share the business elite's passion for the U.S. relationship anymore. Carney knew exactly why. Trust had been broken years ago when the Trump administration launched trade wars, mocked Canadian leadership, and treated Canada's sovereignty as disposable. Those wounds never fully healed. So when the ambassador accused Canadians of being distant, it sounded hollow. Canada didn't drift away. America pushed it away.
We've heard from Doug Ford, the Ontario Premier, saying that Donald Trump could pull the rug out from underneath NAFTA or CUSMA, USMCA, whatever you want to call it, as soon as November. Is there an appetite from the administration to push up the review, which is supposed to be in 2026?
I think that I love Doug. All right, we've met a number of times, we've talked on the phone a number of times, and we've always had great conversations. Canada is the country that has pulled the rug out from USMCA. So for a premier to say, well, the U.S. could pull it out at any minute, the response is, no, Canada pulled out the rug from USMCA. I don't know exactly what the date was, but a few months back when they said, hey, we're going to tariff USMCA products. And this again is, that's a fact. Okay, and that is just throwing it out there, saying, well, this could happen. Lots of things could happen in the future. That's totally hypothetical. But what we do know as a fact is that in retaliation to the tariffs that the U.S. put in place, Canada decided to tariff CUSMA products.
You mentioned you like Doug Ford, but you may say that there have been comments from other politicians, in particular premiers, that have upset you. What are the other comments from premiers, and which premiers have you been upset with the comments that they've made?
Oh, I mean, if, you guys can find those. I mean, if I misstep or, in this interview, if I say a word or a phrase wrong, you and your colleagues across Canadian media will highlight it and nail me in a minute. He got that fact wrong, or he didn't, he doesn't realize this or that. I don't think you guys would have any trouble at all identifying what phrases I might be referencing or what premiers have maybe been critical of the president.
David Eby being one of them. It was his office that leaked that talk that you gave that referenced the president feeling that Canadians are being nasty and mean associated with not going down
He
there.
didn't leak the comment. I said it in an open forum, okay, with, 200, 250 people there. He didn't leak it. He decided, without having been there, to amplify it and, whatever. So that, again, there's an example of me speaking for an hour and Canadians being really, really good at finding a phrase, 10 or 15 words out of an hour conversation with 250 people and say, look at what the American ambassador is saying. And I came out of politics. I'm used to that.
In another interview, Ambassador Pete Hoekstra went even further, blaming Canada for damaging the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement itself. When asked about Ontario Premier Doug Ford's warning that Donald Trump could withdraw from NAFTA or USMCA after November, Hoekstra dismissed the concern and turned the accusation around. He claimed that Canada had pulled the rug out from under the deal by imposing tariffs on U.S. products in response to American trade actions. He insisted this wasn't speculation, but a fact, portraying Washington as the victim rather than the instigator of the trade rift. The ambassador's remarks didn't stop there. When pressed on which Canadian premiers had angered him, he pointed to British Columbia's David Eby, accusing his office of amplifying controversial comments he made about President Trump. Hoekstra also complained that Canadian media highlights every minor slip or phrase he utters, suggesting unfair scrutiny. He compared Canada's response to U.S. tariffs with China's, calling both harsh and retaliatory. His tone implied frustration that Canada refuses to fall in line, a recurring theme in his recent interviews that exposes the growing strain in U.S.-Canada relations.